Hi friends, and welcome to our introduction to Stately Studio and State Machines webinar. I'm Laura and I do advocacy and education for Stately, and this other person here is...
My name is Anders and I do software engineering here at Stately.
We've got lots of really exciting stuff to share with you today, partly because we're also giving you a sneak peek of what's to come in the studio. We've got some things that are going to be released very soon. And before we started, I just wanted to mention that I have got my eyes on LinkedIn and on Twitter, and YouTube comes directly into this little studio here. So if you have any questions that you want to ask us throughout this webinar, please feel free to do so. So you can ask us in the YouTube comments, you can ask us on Twitter, and you can ask us on LinkedIn. Actually, you can ask us on Twitch as well. I think that'll come in directly too. And we will do our best to answer you or direct you to the best place for you to find out that information. We have got some big docs nowadays, and there's lots in there as well. So I thought we would start off by just letting you know a little bit about why we like state machines and why we find them so valuable. We find them great for managing really complex application logic, even managing relatively straightforward application logic. It's a really great way of preventing bugs, being able to spot like undesirable states, undesirable transitions. And one of the most valuable parts we find of visualizing state machines is being able to collaborate with the rest of your team on it. So no longer is all of the application for all of the logic for your application in someone's head. You've actually got a way for the whole team to share it and understand it. And one of the benefits we have with state charts and Stately Studio is that all of that logic is executable as well. So it is your code. So you can have that as your one source of truth. So I think
you touched, just to highlight what you said there, I mean, state machines and state charts is not only for complex things, it's actually very good for simple logic because your logic gets complex quicker than you think if you don't use state charts. The really cool part for me about using state charts is your logic will only do what you design it to do. And if you use other mechanisms like more traditional if-else statements, you can quickly end up in a situation where your logic does like an edge case thing you hadn't thought about, and you then have to add more branching to get rid of that. Whereas with state charts, it basically just only does what you tell it to do.
Yeah, and we'll be showing you some quite simple examples today, so that will be a good way to show you how straightforward and simple it can all be. So I thought we would start off by showing you what you would see if you went to state.new, and that is the quickest way to get started in Stately Studio. So here we go. What you will get is our default machine here. Now, this is a very basic example of what a state machine can look like. And we have an initial state. So this is the first state that we start with in our state machine. We have an event, which then we transition through the event to the next state. We have an example here. I'm just going to run very quickly through it, but these are guards. So these will be your if-else conditions. This is a parent state that has child state. It's a really cool thing that state charts itself enables, to be able to have hierarchy in there. We also have actions. And what we don't actually have on this one is actors, but we can show you that in another example. And so this itself is the Stately Studio, and you can drag all these things around. You can change where your arrows go. And when you get started, when you start a state.new, one of the things you'll probably start off by doing is wiping out all of the states that are inside of your machine, so you can get started with a blank slate. And so you can just do that by selecting everything and pressing backspace. You can easily delete all of your states. So I'm going to, as I often do, I'm going to model a dog walk. It's something that I do every day. It's easy for me to remember. So this is my dog walk machine. This is actually a state itself. We refer to this as the root state. So I'm going to start off by adding in my first child state. And thinking about dog walks, well, one of the things I will do is, I guess, walking. And what's another state I might have? If I think about the states that happen before and after a dog walk, now I'm going to double click inside of my state here. I can create a new one that way by double clicking. And so maybe before we go on a dog walk, we're waiting for a walk. That little exclamation mark there is because it's an unreachable state and I need to connect it to my walking state. So I'm going to drag from here back to my walking state, and that will create a transition with an event on it. And so I'm going to go from waiting to walking. And so I think that'll be start walk. And one of the reasons why this has still got a little exclamation mark there is it's an unreachable state. And that is because this is our initial state. This is the state that the machine is going to start on. But yet the arrow from this state, the transition here, is going in the other direction. So there's no way to actually get to this state. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch these states around. Now, one of the ways I can do this very handily now is to select this event. And I'm going to switch the source and the target. So the source is the state that your transition starts in, and the target is where it ends up. So I'm just going to switch them like that. There we go. So we have, they're the wrong way around, aren't they? This should be our initial state. So we start with waiting. So I'm going to make that into our initial state. I right click on this and I go to mark as initial state. And now I need to switch these back again. There we go. That makes more sense. I'm just going to drag these about to make it laid out in a more easy to understand way. So we start walk, and then we're walking, and then I create another state for what's the state you're in when you're done walking? Sleepy. So we're in a sleepy state, and I'm going to create a transition from walking to sleepy, which is finish walk. And this in itself is a very simple little state machine. It's not lined up very well. I like lining everything up. There we go. That looks nice. And we have the option here. If this is the last state in our machine, we can also set it to be the final state, where we can go state type and final. And this little box here, that's just telling us that this is the final state in the machine. So it knows to run cleanup or anything else that you have associated with your final state. Have I missed anything in my dog walk, Anders?
I think it's a good example of how to do what looks like a single machine and arranging it so it's easily understandable by yourself and your coworkers. So that's really one of the big benefits of using visual app logic like this is it makes it easy to talk about it and make sure that you have everything covered. And I think it looks good.
It's quite a linear example, so it's not the most exciting example. So how about I go find us a more exciting example? So I'm going to go into the top bar here. This is our editor menu, and I'm going to jump to my projects. I haven't created any projects yet, but here I can get to the Discover. And Discover is really cool because it has all of the public machines we have in Stately Studio, and there is a whole variety. But there we go. Here's one I made earlier. This is a dog walk machine that I've got. And so this is a full with images and everything machine. I can zoom in a little bit tighter so you can see that a bit better. So here we've got starting for waiting for a walk, our little doggy friend. And then we have you leave home and then you're on a walk. And here, these two parallel states here, activity and tail. Now these are indicated with a dashed border around the states. And what that means is that these can both be active simultaneously. And so while our dog is walking and running and going between walking and running, our dog can also have its tail either not wagging or wagging. And so a dog can wag its tail while it's running or wag its tail while it's walking or not wag its tail at the same time. And so this is a little example of parallel states. And you can see inside of here, this is a child state. These are child states as well. And walk complete is our final state with the little sleepy dog. And if you find a machine that you really like in Discover, you can always fork it so that you can play with it yourself. So we use the fork button here, and I can have like name my machine what I want. I haven't got a project, so I'm just going to fork it. Oh no, I found a bug. If you haven't got, I need to make a project first. Okay, I'm going to jump back to my projects then. Let me create a project. There we go. Dog walk. I'm going to choose to make this a public one. If you have a pro account, you can also make your machines and your projects unlisted or private. So there's my new dog walk account. Project rather. Now I'll go back. Now let's fork this. There we go, dog walk project.
Cool.
And so now this is my own version, which I can edit however I like. So I can move things around. I can decide, oh, I want it this way. And actually, maybe I don't care about the tail in this machine. And maybe I don't need this activity one anymore. So actually, I'm going to copy and paste these, take away activity, and put them inside on a walk, just like that. This is still a parallel state, so I'm just going to switch that back to a normal state. Something sneaky has shown up in the corner here as well, so I may as well tell you about what this is. This is an annotation, and you can create an annotation at any time by just right-clicking in the canvas and select Add Annotation. And these are little handy nodes that you can use for whatever you like. The key thing to know is that if you want to export your machine as code, these annotations won't be included. And these annotations sit inside the state that they're created in, but they're not actually attached to any state. So you can put them wherever you like. So you might use them as a note to share with your coworker. You might say, I decided to get rid of the parallel states. So that when your coworker comes to look at your machine, they understand why.
Sort of like sticky notes for app logic.
Absolutely. I love that way of describing it. I'll get rid of that one. What else have I got on my list? I'm just going to have a little check just to see if anyone's asked any questions. No, none so far. That's great. A good reminder that you can always ask us a question in the YouTube comments on Twitch. I've also got in my other screen over here, I have LinkedIn and Twitter open. So if you want to ask your questions on there, we will do our best to answer them. Now, what have I missed? Have I missed anything interesting that we want to play with at this point, Anders?
I think it's really good. I mean, it shows. I mean, maybe how do I add those images?
Oh, that's a good question. So if we zoom in a little bit. Now, we're working on improving this feature as well, but if I select the node and I use the little edit button here, this is actually a description. So these descriptions will be exported with your code if you export your machine as code as well. And this just supports any markdown. So right now you can see that I've got this actually hosted on GitHub and I'm just using it from there. SVGs are really nice because if they've got a transparent background, they will work in both light mode and dark mode if you have colors that play well in both. And this is just the markdown that you would use for an image. So use a exclamation mark to open it, open square bracket, your alternative text to make your image accessible, close square bracket, and then the URL is inside the conventional brackets.
That's nice. And I can put any sort of markdown in here. I could also just write a description.
So you can write, here's my description. And you could even do, here's a link, Just an example.
It is warm, so it should be called lunks in the summer. Yeah.
So, and there you can see
nice.
it rendered as just text, and that is a proper clickable link. So it's really handy if you want to include like links to maybe your documentation or Figma files and things like that. Could be quite a useful thing to do there. So let me show you some other types of things that you can do in state machines. Cool. So I wonder if in here, so in the left drawer, you actually have all the machines that you have inside of your projects. Now, I think this is just a new machine. Yeah, that's just the default machine.
What's that search field? I don't think I've seen that before.
Oh yeah, that is very new, and maybe not relevant when you've only got 2 machines, but you can use the search field to narrow down and filter
Oh,
the
nice.
results in the machines list, which makes it much easier if you've got a lot of machines inside of one project. So I'm going to create a new machine. Now you can import from your code here. So if you already have code, maybe you created it with the old stately visualizer. Maybe you just have a state machine you've been working with in X state. You can import the code from there. You can just paste it in there. But I'm just going to go from scratch, and I'm going to call this waiting. And we've got another default machine there, so just get rid of that. And actually, I'm going to make this a begging machine. So this is my state of begging, because if anyone knows dogs, they beg a lot. And so one of the most common types of transitions you'll often see inside of state machines, which we see a lot as a common pattern, is actually when you want to do something that maybe changes your context or changes something else without actually going to a different state. And for that, we would have a self transition. So a self transition is basically an event that happens and then returns back to that same state. So with the example of the dog who's begging, we might have gets treat. So dog is begging, you give the dog a treat. The dog is begging again, you give the dog a treat. And that is essentially Oscar, my dog. That is what he does.
Sounds like my dog Vega too.
Yeah, they're good dogs. They deserve treats. They understand that.
Yeah.
Let me think. An example of another transition, I'm thinking, okay, trying to think in the context of a dog. I'm thinking of doing an eventless transition. So you can have, oh, I've done something funky there. Oh, that's because this is the root state. I'll be right. Yeah. Okay. So there we go. We've got our transition. So how about I'm going to have a state of asleep. This is quite a good example of a state as an asleep state and a wake state. And the dog will always go from asleep to awake, hopefully. And so sometimes we don't actually need to have a particular named event for that to happen. We're going to say that this always, the transitions always happen this way from that state to the other state. And in this case, we'll have what's called an eventless transition, also known as an always transition. So that's just a way of saying every time asleep will always go to awake. Another cool type of transition that you can have is, let's go, actually I'm going to move that transition back to the beginning. And maybe you have a very sleepy dog, and your dog will always go to sleep after a certain amount of time. And this, you can have a transition that is based on a timer, which is an after transition or a delayed transition. And so we can have after, and here it's, this is the point where I have to try and do maths. Okay, how many? 15 seconds, there we go. So after 15 seconds, your dog falls asleep again. Should make it a bit longer.
Very sleepy dog.
Too sleepy dog.
Yeah.
I'm always really bad at working out what those are. There we go. So after 5 minutes, it's very useful that we have that little tooltip there to tell you how long that is. So after 5 minutes, the dog goes from awake to asleep. Now, if you had another transition that was going from awake to, and I've really worked myself into a difficult situation here, because how many more states does a dog have aside from awake and asleep? I'll go back to here. There we go. Now, if the alarm goes off, there we go. The dog will go from awake to asleep. And which one goes first? Well, if the alarm goes off before 5 minutes, then the dog will go from awake to asleep through the alarm goes off event. However, if 5 minutes comes first, then the transition will go from awake to sleep within those 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's a really cool way of modeling, like if you're waiting for user input, as and you need to take a default action after a certain amount of time, maybe close a modal or something, this is a good way to model it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, and Daniel says that his dog is called Oscar as well. Same spelling too.
Oh, nice. We also had a question about if we could provide some content about seeing the visualizer for using real-time machines. And we'd love to do that at some point. We might do it using some upcoming features. Can't share too much, but we are working on some cool stuff in this area. So thank you for the question or the input.
Yeah, we're going to have some big upgrades to the inspector and to being able to visualize them in the not too distant future. Now, what else have I got on my list? So actions and actors. And this is something that's, we've had actions and actors inside of Studio for a long time, but we have very recently given you the ability to be able to add them from straight on the canvas. So just to mention that you can always, when you've got a state selected or event selected, you can use the details panel here to add some more information, add some more details. But most of this is now also, you can just do it directly from the canvas itself. So I'm thinking
this, just to reiterate, we are using a preview version right now, so you won't be able to see this if you go to stately.ai after this webinar. Not yet,
but hopefully
yet.
Very soon. Maybe we're thinking more like days and weeks, or certainly not multiple weeks. Fingers crossed, as long as everything goes well. There's a lot of new stuff, so we have to make sure that it's all working well before we let it loose on the rest of you. And so I might want to add you can add from here, you can add a child state, a self transition, a tag. Tags are also exported when you export your code. I don't think I need to explain what a tag is. On your states, you can also have entry and exit actions. So these are what they sound like. These are actions that are fired on entry to your state or on exit from your state. And so if I wanted to add an entry action, there you go. Well, there's a nice way of showing off a little bit of translucency there. So you can see when there's a lot of stuff overlapping each other. And so an entry action that might happen when the dog falls asleep is, I guess, snoring. That could be my entry action. So the thing about the actions is that they are fire and forget. Whereas if you want to be able to maybe communicate with any other actor as part of the actor model, so as part of a greater system, you could communicate with another machine, or it could be some other process that isn't necessarily fire and forget. You might want to invoke an actor. And so maybe on my awake state, I want to invoke an actor. There you go, invoked actors. And this might be on awake. What actor might I invoke for awake?
Order dog food.
Great. Order dog food for when hopefully the dogs do not get Vagranoski access to the internet. And so these are most of the basics of a state chart. I showed you earlier about how to create child states. So I don't think I need to go through that again. We've done self transitions, we've done descriptions, we've done annotation. Yeah. So maybe we should show you how to simulate machines. That would be cool, wouldn't it?
Let's try it.
So, I'll do it with this one because we've got the nice, we're going to make this timer a little bit shorter. Even shorter than that. Don't ever ask me to do maths of milliseconds. So if we go into simulate mode. Now this will simulate your machine, and that way you can see how you run through it as live. So here what it will show me is the state that I'm currently in, which is the awake state, and it will show me any available transitions that I can take. So I could take the gets treat self transition, which will of course just take me back to it's to the begging state there. We can set the alarm off. The alarm goes off. What have I done wrong?
You've added the always transition, so we are not. It's going to
It's just
transition from
looping through it.
asleep to awake before we actually see it. So maybe just
Thank you.
yeah,
Good spot. Take that out.
and add
There we
just
go.
if you just add a regular transition from asleep to awake, then we'll be able to see it. Yeah, the other way
Other
around.
way.
But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that is an invocation because we've.
So if you just delete that and
There we go.
drag it from the other side, it should be good. Yeah, exactly.
I'll just leave that as that. So we see. There we go. Right, that's better. And so you can self-transition back to begging. You're in a sleep, and you can go through this event 1, very original naming, to awake, and you can see that it went through the after transition, which is why it transitioned back to a sleep after 3 seconds. But if I'm quick enough and I click alarm goes off first, then it won't. It's sooner than the 3 seconds required. And we'll show you some cool stuff with live simulation mode a bit later. Oh, one of the things I hadn't shown you yet is light mode and dark mode. So like all good modern web applications, we have a light mode and a dark mode. And you can switch them by pressing on your user avatar in this top corner. And as well as being able to do things like disable translucency, you can switch to light mode. We have a lovely bright light mode that looks particularly good with colors, but we'll show you that later. Oh, here we also do have the changelog, so you can find out everything that's been added recently. We also have down here a help button in the bottom right-hand corner, and this will open up with some tutorials. We'll be actually making these better very soon, actually. But right now, they've got links to the documentation and how to get started with state machines. And you can request feedback at feedback.stately.ai. I think I have a banner here for that somewhere. There we go. So feedback.stately.ai is where you can request new features and you can upvote other people's suggestions. And we use that to prioritize the features that we work on.
Mm-hmm.
I just noticed that we had another question from CatDad Code saying, when do we get access to the version of the studio that you're using? As you say, we're working to get it out right now. It's just the last few details of making sure that everything's working. So we're hoping very soon, and we're talking hopefully days and not weeks. I think that's, unless something gets in the way.
Basically, this development has finished. We're in the Q&A phase, so it should be soon.
Yeah.
Unless we find some major blockers, it should be very soon.
Yeah. It's so exciting. We're so excited about it. We've been going on about it in office hours so much recently. So I think next I'm going to show you what we can do is we can upgrade. So if you upgrade, you can get a 30-day free trial, and that will enable you access to all of the pro features. So I would really recommend that you try it out just so you can see what's available to you. But one of the reasons why I've shown you this on a non-upgraded account is just to show you this is where the button is if you want to upgrade and try out some of the cool features we are going to show you in a minute. Anders, do you want to show folks some of these pro features?
Mm-hmm. I'd love to.
And while you're setting that up, I'm just going to answer CatDad Code's question. Will this new version support V5? Xstate V5 is in beta right now, and we have been working on making it supported in the studio. It's not quite there yet, so this is not something that will be released in the next couple of weeks, but it is in progress. So hopefully it shouldn't be too long. You can, that's one of the things you can upvote on feedback.stately.ai, is let us know that this is a priority for you. But I think if you look at the V4 and V5, there's actually very little that you do have to switch over, particularly the features in the studio. So I think if you're building machines in V4 in the studio and you export it, it shouldn't take much to make them work with V5. And we've got a migration guide as well. Do I have the URL for this? Close enough. stately.ai/docs/xstate-v5, and there you can find a migration guide that will just gives you a list of the things you can run through to switch your machines over from V4 to V5. Generally, it's a lot simpler, V5, and there's a lot of really cool things in there to help you understand the concepts and get going a lot quicker. So it's definitely good to start working in V5 even if the studio doesn't support it yet. Right, oh, I can see what Anders is going to show you, so I'm going to add that.
So I have a simulation machine here. Let me zoom in a little bit. And one of the things you can see is that it looks very colorful compared to before. And one of the pro things you get when you buy a subscription is you get the ability to change colors once this releases out. And it really helps kind of organize the logic. It's even simpler to communicate about collaborate on the app logic with your colleagues, because colors just really help guide you through the logic. And one other cool thing you get is that you can change the visibility of a project. So by default, projects are public, which means everyone can see them if they know the URL. And you can also find it in the Discover search. And this is really good for sharing app logic, and it's really good for inspiration as well. If I need to implement something like authentication, I can just go into Discovery and search for auth, and there are already hundreds of different machines for the typical types of app logic you need, which is super cool. But with a Pro account, you also get two more options. You get the ability to create a unlisted project, which basically means that if you share the URL with someone, they're still able to open it, but it won't show on the Discover page. So it's not like publicly available, it's only available for those you share the link with. And then you have full private, which means that it's only you that can access this unless it's a team project. And team is another pro feature. But we'll keep this public for now. But
how about versions?
Yeah, so we have versions. So let's say I'm working on this. I actually kind of like the current state, so I'm just gonna hit save, and now I can change stuff around. I can like just change a lot here, and I can create a new version.
And you can name those versions as well, can't you?
I can name them, yes. So like latest thing, and the previous one was like this was good.
And you could also do things like semantic versioning if you want to match it up with your code base or something like that.
Then I can see, okay, maybe I want to go back and look at why was this thing good. And I can restore to this version if I want to. I can jump between all the different versions I had. I have one here without colors, pretty dull. So let me jump back to, I think this was good is actually what I wanted. So let me restore that. So now that's my head version. I can keep working on this because I want to show something called live simulation. You already showed us that we're able to go into simulate. I can like work through this machine. I can press all the events. And if I'm in a team meeting, this is really great for kind of talking about, okay, so we are now in waiting for some action or initial state. You can toggle on to the first event received, but what about those that are not able to be in the same room as you? Now we have the ability to what's called start a live simulation. And you'll notice that you're in live simulation because all the edges becomes orange instead of blue. And if I copy this link, I'm just going to open it in a second window. And this can be some other place. It doesn't have to be on the same machine. So I could send this to Laura, but just for the sake of having two screens on here at once, we'll just do it on my machine. So if I press toggle over here, it's going to transition in the other browser as well immediately. So it's sort of like a more collaborative simulation session. And that's
and
also
it's so fast.
It's super fast and it's really fun. So that's also one of the pro features. And we've shown you colors. What else
I
can
was
we
just
show?
thinking, as you've got them there in your machine, and I didn't show them
Mhm.
earlier, could you show folks how you would add a new guard to an event to transition?
Yes. If I can remember this one.
Yeah.
I'll press the plus button, I'll add a guard condition. So now it's going to say, I'll toggle if some condition, if the sun is up. And then in the code, you have to provide like the logic for triggering and finding out if the sun is up or not. And then we can add an else condition. So if the sun is not up, we'll always just go through this else thing. And if I simulate, I get the option as the user to kind of pick which one of these I want to test out, which is really handy. And one cool thing about the colors as well is as you kind of hover over, you can see you get the immediate preview of the new color, which I find especially lovely. It's really
And
cool.
you can color your transitions as well. It's not
Yes.
just tied to states.
Nope. You
Oh,
can
could you show what
really,
it looks like in light mode? Because I think it's really pretty in light mode.
let's test it.
Yeah, there we
This
go. It's
is
so
light mode.
vibrant.
It's really cool.
I've made lots of fun machines with color. Just makes them so nice. But it also, if you're working on a really massive machine, we've got some
Yeah.
really big machines that power the studio itself. And
Yeah.
it can just be really useful to help you map different areas of your machine so that you can jump to them visually very easily. I find it very good for that.
I can show a quick example of like, this is a huge machine I've got on GitHub. It's
Whoa.
for like a web shop. And I mean, I can open it up here and I can look through a great machine. I can try to talk to my teammates about this logic, but I mean, it's much cooler to be able to see this in the studio. And one thing we can do today is when you have a pro subscription, you just open your file on GitHub and you just double click on .com in GitHub and you change that to be stately.ai and we'll actually import the entire thing. And here you'll see we'll import it into the old design. I mean, it's already much better. This is just the default layout. Now I can I can save this machine. I can start editing, but I mean, when we release colors, it's just going to be so much easier to organize all this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot to
So
look at.
let me jump back here. It's a lot prettier in here.
And hey, why don't we, I'm going to share my dog machine with you and then you can open
Cool.
it. So I'm just going to switch to sharing my screen just briefly. And so right now, one of the features of the Pro is if I go to my projects, oh, this is my wrong account. Let me share my other screen. I've got two windows open that look identical. It's always great when you're trying to do screen sharing. Here we go. And it is this one. Okay, there we go. So I have, all right, too many windows open, Laura. There we go. So I can see what Anders is doing as well. This is not that screen. Okay. Try that again. Different screen. There we go. That's better. So this is one of my dog walk machines, and I've been working in this little dog walk project. And I'm like, well, it's nice that I've got it public and I'm working on it myself, but I'd actually really like to share this with people that I'm working with. And here, Anders has set up a team for us. And the members of our team is Anders. He's the owner and the admin because he set the team up to begin with. And I'm a mere editor. The editors can actually do pretty much everything that an owner and an admin can do, except you can't delete projects. And viewers is another role that you can have, which means someone can just view a machine, but they can't do anything else with it. So I'm going to, currently we've actually got no projects in our intro webinar, but I want to share my project with Anders. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it into that project. So if I go to the share in the top right-hand corner, I have an option to, as Anders was showing you before, make it public, unlisted, or private. I'm now on my own personal account, so I have access. I've got a pro account. But I've decided I want to move my project to the intro webinar team. So I'm going to move that in there. And you can't tell what's changed, but if Anders is looking at it, if I remove my screen so you can show yours again, you should be able to see my dog walks project inside of the team yourself.
I think I am. Do I need to re-present, or can you see my screen?
I think you have to reshare it.
Okay, 2 seconds. I'm hitting the button now. It's reshared.
There we go.
Okay, let me go into
Lovely light mode.
joint
And there we
team.
go.
Yeah, there we go. Now I actually have access to this, and this is now a private project. Team projects are private by default, but
Yes.
you can change them to public if you really want to. But now that this is a team project, I can start contributing to it and trying to learn about Buscast, cool, different states.
Yeah, you could add colors to it. You could do whatever you like.
Yeah.
You can change the layout. It's a great way to improve upon your teammates' machines, is by improving the layout for them to make it as readable as possible.
It really is, actually. We had an internal meeting at Stately yesterday where I presented like a draft of a state chart, and soon after our meeting, I got a new link from chief designer Nick, and he's done a new layout. He's just touched it up, so now it's much better. So it's really good for collaboration.
He's added a few more, like a couple more transitions there, a couple more states. It's a really fun way to collaborate in that way. And hey, if you're using live simulation mode, you could do it together.
Exactly. I think that's it for our current intro, or have you forgotten to share anything?
I think that is everything. I know what we haven't done is what may well be the final step in the studio for a lot of you, and that is that, of course, all of this is executable code. Now, in the future, we are looking at features where you can sync bidirectionally, but right now you can import and you can export. So there we go.
So once you open the code panel, you'll get the 3 export formats we support right now. More are coming very soon. And you can just switch between these tabs. So if you want TypeScript code, you just go here and you press copy. Now it's in your clipboard, and you just move over to your code editor and paste it in. But as Laura said, we are working on adding bidirectional syncing, initially for GitHub, and that's looking really promising. So we'll have more to share soon on that.
It is very often requested.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any more questions, you know where to ask them. And otherwise, if you have any questions that you come up with at a later point, you can always join us on our Discord. And that is at discord.gg/xstate. I know it off by heart. I just can't find the banner for it. There we go. So that's our Discord. You can also find us on pretty much every social channel. We are Stately AI. You can find us on YouTube if you're not watching us there already. We have lots of videos coming up there. In fact, this Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern time, we have our next office hours. So hopefully we'll have some cool stuff to share with you then. That's just where the team gets together to show what they've been working on. And you can ask us any questions that you have in there as well. Anything else you wanted to add, Anders?
No, just say thanks for joining, and thank you, Laura, for hosting.
Thank you, Anders, for hosting as well. And well, hope to see you all soon. Remember, just get in touch with us if you have any more questions. If there's anything you want to learn about, we're always listening out for what you want, and that you kind of give us our direction for what we work on next. And we're trying to make this easier to use and more accessible to you. So if you have any feedback or any suggestions, we would love to hear it. And thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.